incorporate them in different ways. So I'm assuming most of you know what a bear crawl is, but just in case you don't know, I'll just do a little demonstration. Basically mimicking how a bear moves, using its quadrupedal locomotion. So you get down on all fours, your toes in your hands, and you set just like that. So it's pretty basic. That basic bear crawl is really good for working wrist strength, a lot of different joint strengths, ankles, toes, shoulders, a lot of that kind of thing. And it's good for working the core and just overall body strength. And I kind of got into bear crawls a lot this last summer actually. I started doing them a lot, incorporating them into my workouts. With me and a couple of friends, we do bear crawls all summer long, so that's kind of where I got the idea and different variations of how I like to use it. So before I really get into the whole bear crawl thing, I would like to just go over some basic safety and precautions that you should use before you start doing bear crawls and anything like that. So the very first thing to do before you start doing a bear crawl is to check if you have a nice surface. So something like this is pretty soft. It's not really, doesn't scrape you up much or anything like that. It's a pretty good surface. Outdoors, pretty nice usually. If you do it outdoors in the grass or something like that, you want to kind of walk along the surface, make sure there's no like thorns, sticks, broken glass, anything like that. Surfaces that you really want to avoid are obviously like a track, especially on a really hot day. I'll just burn your hands up, tear your hands up, you're going to end up with blisters everywhere. Also, another surface you'd like to avoid is, depends if there's like snow or something outside, maybe put gloves on, try to avoid the frostbite, that type of thing. Also, this surface is a pretty nice one, but if you work on like maybe concrete, tile, something like that, you might want to get a little more cushion in there. Next thing for safety, I like to just go over kind of proper types of clothing. Obviously, for shoes, you want shoes that tie, kind of like mine right here. You want something that has a solid sole, so something wouldn't be able to poke through it necessarily, but one that also bends at the toe, because like how you saw earlier, your toe's pretty much always bent right here when you're doing a bear crawl. I kind of recommend, if you're going to be just starting bear crawls, maybe wearing pants or sweatpants, gym pants, something like that, just because not everybody's going to be able to stay on their hands and feet the entire time. You might want to rest on your knees, so a little more padding might be kind of nice. Like I said earlier, in certain situations you might want to wear gloves. You might have just really sensitive hands. Some of you have really calloused hands. It's a different story. Really sensitive hands, you might like gloves to help you out on the outdoors or even on something like this. And like I said earlier, if you happen to be crawling through the snow for any reason, some people just like to do that. And one thing I like to recommend to people, it's not really a safety thing, but to tuck in your shirt, just so you're kind of up at that angle, you don't want to always have to deal with your shirt riding up, and it could be awkward, embarrassing, or you just don't want to deal with it the whole time. And the last thing for safeties and precautions is you are on your hands and feet the whole time, toes. So you might, if you have weak wrists or something, either wear a brace of some sort, maybe wrap it. Same thing with your ankles. Obviously, if your wrists or ankles are really that bad, then you might want to take a different approach. Maybe do some sort of different method of bear crawl, which I'll go over later, that doesn't put as much pressure on those ankles or joints. And then also, just in case you jam your fingers one time or another, you could wrap your fingers just to help them out from the support. And that's about all I have for safety and precautions. It's a relatively safe thing to do as long as you take those precautions and make sure you do it right. Now, for people that can do bear crawls, there's a pretty wide demographics that I think could really benefit from bear crawls. The first demographic would be like young children. Obviously, you see them around all the time, they like to mimic animals. So why not take that and say, hey, go crawl like a bear. That's a really good way to get their physical activity, send them to a tree and back. Obviously, after you check if there's nothing terrible to hurt themselves on. That's a good way to kind of get kids active, and they're going to enjoy that a lot. Another one would be adolescents. You know, maybe those youth soccer leagues or youth baseball, football, anything like that. It's a good kind of different way to get some conditioning in without just running around the field 10 times, doing wind sprints, anything like that, push-ups, sit-ups, the usual. So instead, have them get on the ground, do some bear crawls, just work out different muscles a little different way. Also, another good age group would be anywhere between, say, college age, our age, up through middle age, 40, 50, anything like that, as long as their fitness level is relatively decent. Even if they don't have a great fitness level, most of those individuals will be able to do some sort of modified bear crawl, shorter time, different sort of incline, something like that. And for those people, it's really important, especially as you get older, the 30, 40, 50 range, to do that functional training, work on the balance, coordination, all sorts of things like that. And also leading into that balance and coordination, final demographic would be the elderly, if they're able. I know you're not going to see a lot of grandmas and grandpas out there crawling around on their hands and feet, but there are some that could still do that. They would benefit from it. Really helps with joint integrity, helps with balance, coordination. Take it slow. Maybe just have them climb up a hill a little bit so they don't have as much pressure on their wrists, maybe. Anything like that. Or even just doing a simple start on their hands and knees and maybe just going up to the bear crawl position, just holding that. Something as simple like that can be beneficial to the elderly individuals. So like I said, I kind of went over every demographic there is. I mean, I guess even infants, if they're crawling around, I didn't even really think about that. So basically anyone, if their fitness level is good enough, can do bear crawls. And really when it comes to the fitness level, it's all about the joint integrity, the wrist strength, things like that, and you can find ways around that to help them do it. So now I'd like to get into the meat of this presentation, which is the different kinds of varieties of bear crawls that you can do. Not many people know, but there's a ton of things you can do with the bear crawl. So like I showed you, just the basic bear crawl, just forward. That's great for beginning. It's great for full body strength, full body coordination, balance, all of that. Core strength, that's good. You can do it for ever, work on muscular endurance, anything like that. Then there's also the backwards variation, which not many of you will think it's very difficult maybe, but you'll be surprised if you get down and actually try it. It gets pretty tricky in the coordination ways. So backwards, just the same thing, but moving backwards. And when you see people do it, you can see them on the ground, and you can see them really thinking about it. They're like, all right, the foot needs to go there, and then they end up just in a scrunch ball, not figuring it out. So it's a really good way to work on that cognitive side of things as well. Figure out your body, how it works. And then the same thing, it's really just an increased cognitive and coordination method to do forwards, and it's also the same as muscular strength and endurance as going forwards, it's just going the different way. Also, I have a lot of different variations for strength training, which would be going forwards but uphill. So if you're climbing uphill forwards, you're really going to be working, you're going to have a lot less pressure on your wrists and a lot more pressure on the back, and you're really going to be forcing the concentric contractions of the quads, the hammies, the glutes, all the muscles in there. And you really have to drive up that hill. What I like to do, not many people probably do this for fun, but I like to go out to my local sledding hill and just go up and down that, up and down that. I think it's a lot of fun. Another way to work the legs a little differently is by going downhill but backwards. So instead of doing concentric contractions, you'll be doing eccentric of the quads, hammies, glutes, all of that. Pressure still won't be on the wrists, it'll be all on the back of your body, and you'll just be going slowly, letting yourself back downhill. Fortunately, I tried to set up some steps, but I needed like 30 to actually get a good amount, so I'd like to show you those though. Another good way to work on strength training, but work on the upper body, would be going backwards, uphill. So then you're putting a lot of pressure on the wrist. You do need fairly good strength in your wrist to do this, but it is a really good workout. You really work the deltoids, really work the triceps, anything that you're pushing, the traps. So all your weight's in the front of your body and you're just driving yourself backwards up the hill. I think that's a really good workout. Like I said, I do it on my local sledding hill and it is exhausting. I'm impressed. If anyone can go up a whole hill like that without going down, that's quite a feat to me. And then the same kind of thing, if you go forwards, downhill, you're working the eccentric contraction of all those muscles, slowly lowering yourself all the way down to the bottom of the hill. Once again, that's brutal too, especially if you do uphill backwards. Your arms are already dead, and then you try to go back downhill just trying to hold yourself up. It's a real challenge. Then those are the four kind of main. Actually, I have a couple more strength training ones, but I'll get to those later. So then you kind of get into more of the coordination type things. You can do different bear crawls for coordination and those cognitive things. You really have to think about them. So one would be going sideways. So you get in your bear stance and step sideways. You can cross your arms. I like to have people go over and then maybe under, or just come together like that. Once again, that's really tough. People think about that. It's a good one to work different muscles in a different plane of movement. And then once people get good at going forwards, backwards, side to side, my favorite drill to do, a lot of football, soccer teams will do this for agility. They'll do a square drill. So what they do is they sprint forward to the first cone, then they shuffle to the second, then they go backwards to the third, and they complete the square with the shuffle going the other way. I like to do the same thing. I like to do a bear crawl forward, bear crawl sideways, backwards, sideways. It's a lot of fun, kind of gets crazy. A few other agility type drills I like to do are suicides with bear crawls. So you go forward, forward further, backward, forward further, backward. They're all pretty exhausting. And then you could really change it up, get different blocks or things like the steps over there, and start using some kind of like obstacle course, going over things, under things, all while doing a bear crawl, setting limits for sideways, forwards, backwards, anything like that. And I have a couple more strength-related variations. Just to change it up, if you don't feel like finding a hill, maybe you can't find a hill, you could do, get a sled and do sled pulls. So that way you can even control the weight. It's a little more. So you can put as much weight as you want back on the sled, wrap it around your waist, your shoulders, something like that, and then drag it back, forward, backwards, side to side. You can go any different way. That's really good for that directional strength. And then another different way to work more of a isometric strength really is maybe put on a weighted vest and do a regular bear crawl, or just again do that standstill bear crawl, maybe for older individuals that can hold themselves up but they still aren't getting the coordination thing quite right. You can add a little extra weight, help them strengthen those muscles still. And then one of my favorite ones would be what I call a bear gallop. So this would be a little bit more for cardio and a little bit more for muscular power. So this is obviously a faster variation of the bear crawl. You can do it on both sides. I usually do it on my right side, but obviously you should switch sides when you can. So it's just basically a faster bear crawl. Like that. And that's what I call a bear gallop. And then if you get good at that, you can get really crazy. And I don't know if there's a real name for this, but I call it an anamorph. I don't know if anyone read those books way back when. But basically people who morph into animals, but I do it the reverse way. So you do a bear gallop, and then you sprint. So, bear gallop, and sprint. So, something like that. Once again, it's really good for working both agility, power, cardio. I'm already breathing pretty hard. And that's another thing you could do in suicides. Maybe gallop 20 yards, sprint the next 80. Something like that. It's a good way to do functional too, especially for athletes if they're down scrambling on the ground, get back up really fast. So that is it for my variations of bear crawls. I know that was a lot, it's a lot of different variations to remember, but I like to use them all when I work out. I think they're really fun. So now I'm going to go into a couple pros and cons of bear crawls. I've said a lot of good things, but there are bad things. But first I'll stick with the good things. So first of all, functional strength. It's really good. You're using all these muscles together to do something. You're not just sitting there lifting one weight, using your bicep, doing that over and over again. Instead, you're using all of your muscles trying to accomplish something. And even for, as you get older, it comes in real handy if you're maybe crawling on the ground, you fall down, crawling on the ground really helps you get back up or get to somewhere so you can at least get help. Also, like I said earlier, it's really good for that cognitive side. It's really helpful. I have my mom out doing bear crawls every now and then, and I can just see her. I can just see her brain turning, especially when she's going backwards. She has to really think about it, and it's really good for that. She's getting better, and you can really tell that she's working her brain with it as well. And then two of the most important things, I think, is the coordination and balance you get from it. Just learning how to use all your body parts together, and then half the time you're on one foot, one hand. So you're just getting incredible balance, especially in that core right there, working everything. Some cons of bear crawls, obviously, like I said earlier, it's stressful on some of your joints. It can be kind of tough on the weak wrists, anything like that. And it can be risky without those precautions that I talked about earlier. So that's really important to make sure you get all of those covered, make sure you're doing it safely so you don't hurt yourself. And once again, I said most people can do them, not everybody can do them, unfortunately. So that's something that I would personally like to find ways to make it so more people could do them. Try to find different modifications. And the ways I like to implement these into my workouts are, there's a few different ways I like to do. Maybe I'll just do it occasionally just to change things up. Maybe I'm working out for a month in a certain plan, and I do it once that month, maybe just to throw something different in there. Sometimes I'll do it weekly, have a client do it weekly. Just have a day where you just do bear crawls. Do that all day, it's kind of a nice change up. And then there's also something I like to do is the bear crawl regimen. You spend 2 weeks, maybe a month doing bear crawls. Every workout, you have a lot of variety. Something kind of silly that I like to do is I like to name each day after a different species of bear. So there's 8 bears, so I try to kind of relate them in just for something fun for me, it's fun for the client, just to kind of remember it by. For example, polar bear day would be you'd crawl around, maybe you jump into a lake in a pool, do some swimming, and then crawl out of the pool, do some more crawling, something like that. There's also, my favorite is Panda Day. It's actually the slowest bear in the species, if nobody knew that. So I just do really slow bear crawls for like, I think I did like 600 yards or something back and forth, just something like that. And that's pretty much what I've got for you. Do I have any questions?
I'll give you one. You said there's not many modifications for bear crawls. I would agree. Do you know of any? The only thing I think I heard you say was going up with less pressure on your wrist.
Right. There would be different things. I like sliders that you can put on the floor. So instead of lifting up, you can keep everything down and just slide across. That's a good question. No.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, that's the one I thought of
Sliders.
on top
I
of my
didn't
head.
know sliders.
Do you have another one? Out of curiosity.
No,
Okay.
as I said, I don't. If you can't do it,
Yeah, I think sliders good. Even
What about something using the ball? Like a smaller ball
possibly.
that you could like roll, you know, like, so then you would walk with your hands still, but then you're not putting the pressure like all the way down on the ground. You could potentially walk with your feet on the ground and your hands on the ball and roll the ball along as you're walking.
Oh.
Possibly. Yeah. And then
I don't know.
going along with like the incline, decline, I think even easier would be using like stairs or something like that. It's kind of a consistent incline, and there's still a flat surface that you can put your hands on. I think that'd be a good way to do it as well. Any other questions?
You're gonna have people try it.
Yeah, does anyone want to try it? Maybe backwards? Anyone can do a backwards bear crawl?
I'll stop recording, so.
Right?